Warm welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone can hear me okay. If you can, please do let me know. If you can't hear me, please do let me know. My name is Michaela Skodova, and I'm the CAN EU CAPIT Communications Manager. I will be hosting and facilitating this webinar today. We have muted you on entry, so you won't actually be able to talk using your microphone, but you have a chance to interact with us via the chat panel. So on your right-hand side, there should be a chat option, so you can send the questions directly to me, or just ask them in general, and I'll make sure I'll get them. Interact with us using that if you can. To test the connections today, welcome everyone again. If you're just joining us now, please let us know where are you joining us from today? Which country are you joining us from? Here with me today is Samuel Féret, a Groupe de Bruges president who is currently working for an innovation platform on family farming and is also one of the lecturers for the CAP Pro course. The CAP Pro e-learning course here on the CAN EU CAPIT platform. His topic for today is CAP, greening or greenwashing. We will also be recording this event, so everyone who missed it will be able to listen to it later. And before we start, a few words about the CAN EU CAPIT project. So this platform is co-financed by the European Commission, and its features is to provide learning tools about the CAP reform and to offer a place for discussion. I'm also excited to announce that we have an e-learning course, as I mentioned before, on the Common Agriculture Policy for professionals as well as students or other members of the agriculture sector. If you need a comprehensive and accessible overview of the CAP reform, we offer it completely for free on our platform, and I encourage you to explore this after the webinar. This session is going to last approximately 30 minutes, and you will get a chance to ask your questions throughout, but they will be read by me in the end. So I hope you can all hear me okay. Please do let me know if you can via the chat window. And I will now give the floor to Samuel Féret. So Samuel, you can now start presenting.
Okay. Thank you, Michaela. Good afternoon. I will introduce the presentation on this subject today, greening or greenwashing of direct payments. Just let me introduce myself briefly. I'm the new president of Groupe de Bruges, and basically I'm a rural sociologist, and I have worked a lot in France and from France on the CAP reform from 2 decades. And right now I'm also involved on the innovation agenda in family farming. So today I propose you the following agenda for this webinar. First point, to give you a general approach of the greening. Secondly, to have a financial approach of the greening with the financial approval. Thirdly, to come back to the measures related to the greening package. Fourth point, to have a look on the implemented flexibilities about the greening package. Fifth point, about the simplification of the greening measures. Sixth point, to have a first estimation of the farmers' concern about the greening measures. 7 point, a slide about the next steps towards 2020 about the greening. And 8 point, a conclusion. So, first, the approach of the greening through the Common Agricultural Policy, the CAP. So we can say that before the 2013 reform, environmental components of the CAP are first the cross-compliance within the Pillar 1 for all direct payment beneficiaries, and cross-compliance is mandatory. And secondly, agri-environmental measures through Pillar 2 for volunteers. and here agri-environmental measures are facultative. However, those twofold components are not powerful enough to achieve the environmental and climate performance of the CAP, because even if cross-compliant is a polluter-pays principle oriented, it lacks controls and very few arise if it, so its efficiency was in question. And agri-environmental measures lack funding and incentives through Pillar 2 to become a more attractive scheme for farmers. In 2010, before the last CAP reform, a public debate on public goods to provided and to be provided by farmers has started. It was thanks to the Commissioner Cholos, the new Ag Commissioner. And Commissioner Cholos himself and DG Agri Services have proposed to introduce simple, generalized, non-contractual and annual agri-environmental actions backed on agricultural production. In some ways, he has identified a need to bridge a gap between the carrot and the stick. The carrot is the cross-compliance, and the stick is the agri-environmental scheme, and through a new instrument in Pillar 1. So we could say it was a paradigm shift, since so far the environmental improvement of the CAP was mainly through the Pillar 2 and rural development programs. So here it proposed to have an incremental improvement of the environmental component within Pillar 1 as a way to reinforce the legitimacy of direct payments. So in that way, direct payments are maintained and sustained towards 2020. And this slide about the approval of the greening concept of direct payment. This is an extract from the multi-financial framework political deal achieved in February 2013 from the Council. And I have highlighted some sentences about the greening concept. First of all, it recognized that the overall performance of the CAP will be enhanced through the greening of direct payments by means of certain agricultural practices. So we start from agricultural practices there. And regarding the provision, member states will use 30% of the annual national ceiling with a clearly defined flexibility for the member states relating to the choice of equivalent greening measures. In addition, the requirement to have an ecological focus area, EFA, on each agricultural holding will be implemented in ways that do not require the land in question to be taken out of production and that avoids unjustified losses in the income of farmers. So it means that the approval of the concept for greening the direct payment has been taken outside the CAP reform negotiation within the financial talks. This is a very, very important point. In that respect, this is a chart about the structure of the CAP expenditures towards 2020. And here the novelty is the introduction of a new category of spending. Here on the right side, you have in red color with black stripes this new green payment corresponding to 30% of direct payments from 2016 there towards 2020. So now we enter into the greening package, the greening measures themselves from the direct payment regulation. And we have here three new measures according to the greening package. The first one is the crop diversification. It means that at least 2 crops are needed when arable land is beyond 10 hectares, and at least 3 different crops when arable land is over 30 hectares. And the main crop may cover not more than 75% of arable land, and the 2 main crops of at most 95% of the arable area. The second measure is about permanent grasslands and pastures, and 95% of declared permanent grassland and pastures shall be maintained. It means that 5% may be plowed, it's allowed, and in addition, member states have the possibility to design sensitive permanent grassland inside and outside Natura 2000 framework. And finally, the third greening measure is about ecological focus area, EFAs. So 5% of the arable land of the farm holding are exigible, so it's at least 5%. And for farms who have more than 15 hectares of arable land, and whose EFAs may include, for instance, field margins, hedges, trees, fallowland, landscape features, buffer strips, a forested area, but also cultivated area. And permanent grassland are not allowed as EFAs. There is also a possibility to have some collective approaches and regional implementation for EFAs. So this is the basic menu of the 3 greening measures. In addition, the rural development, the direct payment regulation fix some exemptions and some flexibilities to the greening package. The first one is about organic farmers. They are already and automatically qualified for the green payment without having to observe the three measures. Secondly, farmers involved under the small farmer schemes are exempted from the greening measures and the green payment. Thirdly, the permanent crops like arboriculture, etc., are excluded from the EFA's requirements, so they are not concerned. And the regulation introduced some flexibilities, and for instance, the possibility to have some and to recognize some equivalent practices through agri-environmental schemes, so through Pillar 2, or through national or regional environmental certification schemes. But whose equivalent practices shall not receive any double payment from Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, obviously. Thirdly, regarding the payment itself, green payment may be either a flight rate, so a 30% flight rate for the unit value per hectare for all beneficiaries, or the green payment can be proportional to the historical individual reference of payment, regardless the convergent process. And the flat rate may be fixed also at regional level. And finally, member states have a great and a very large choice of items for EFAs, including landscape features, cultivated production, etc., etc. And they have the possibility to use a conversion matrix in order to measure the size and the length of landscape features. So this is about the greening package exemptions and main flexibilities. So now we may have a look at the main implemented flexibilities by the member states, so the flexibilities which have been notified to the European Commission from last year. First, about equivalent practices, 5 member states have introduced and have asked for such equivalent practices. France and Netherlands have asked for certification schemes, mainly for crop diversification measure. And in addition, Austria, Ireland, and Poland have asked for equivalent practices with rural development commitments. For permanent grasslands and pastures, 4 member states, Belgium, France, Germany, and UK have decided to apply the obligation and the ratio at regional level and not at national level. And regarding the EFA and the collective approach, only 2 member states, Netherlands and Poland, have decided to activate that option. And finally, for the forest exemption, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, and Sweden have introduced that option. And on the right, we have two charts. At the top, this is the number of types of EFAs that the member states have activated, have chosen under EFAs. So you can see on the left that the nitrogen fixing crops is the most popular item chosen by member states, because in the final deal of the CAP reform and in the delegated acts afterwards, the member states have gained the possibility, to recognize some cultivated areas like nitrogen fixing crops. So this is the main popular item for EFA, following by land-lying fallow, and in third position by landscape features. And regarding the landscape features, below, we can see on the left that the trees in group and the field margins and the trees in lines are the most favorite item selected by the member states under the landscape feature. So this is just a point about the technical practicalities and modalities of implementation of EFAs. Right now we are moving to the 5th point about simplification. The simplification debate on greening, and mainly about EFAs, has been put at the top of the agenda of the European Commission and the new Commissioner Hogan, because many member states and MEPs have raised some concerns about the EFA's implementation. And in May 2015, this year, the Commissioner Hogan has announced a first package of simplification about EFA. So we have I've picked up some examples there. For instance, the possibility to accept that member states, if that's a wish, only need to map declared EFAs. It means that they don't need to map other EFAs, non-declared EFAs. To allow that a missing EFA may be compensated by another EFA, even if this EFA has not been declared by the farmer. To allow edges or wooded strips with gaps up to 4 meters, because in the member state we had experimented some discussion, technical discussion about the length and the size of edges. And finally, final example, about leguminous crops. So it's a nitrogen fixing crop. For example, alfalfa should not be considered by definition as a permanent grassland after 5 years. So it's related also to the permanent pasture and grassland maintenance. And next year, a second simplification package on greening is to be released by the European Commission. So it's about simplification of the implementation of greening measures, and mainly about EFAs at the moment. 6th point, it's the number of farmers concerned. So it's, I would say, an estimation at this stage, some first and partial estimations of farmers who will have to comply with the greening measures. So we have picked up some first and partial estimations made by the French Ministry of Ecology and from different sources, from the Wageningen University, from the Federal Institute of Art Ministry Tunen, and from the Polish Ag Ministry, and from an Italian researcher, that shows that, for instance, for the Netherlands, 34% of farmers will have to comply with the greening measures. In Germany, for instance, we have one figure only for crop rotation. 25,000 farmers will have to comply with the crop diversification. Sorry, I make a mistake on the title. It's crop diversification and crop rotation. For Poland, the average is about 17% of farmers who have to comply with the greening measures, and here 10% for the EFAs. And in Italy, we have this 3.8% of farmers who have to comply with crop diversification. So it's very first and partial estimations, and overall estimations will be published at the end of the year by DG Agri, obviously. So, 7 points about the next steps toward 2020. According to the direct payment regulation, an evaluation of the ecological focus areas, the EFAs, is to be done by March 2017. I would say that at the moment, the political will for such evaluation is more administrative burden oriented rather than on biodiversity performance. It means that we may lack some criteria to assess the biodiversity performance of EFAs. The objective of EFAs is the maintenance and the improvement of biodiversity on farm holding, so we need some criteria for that. And in addition, according to the direct payment regulation, the 5% of EFAs could eventually rise to 7% after a Commission report by March 2017, and eventually thanks to a legislative proposal. But in my opinion, it's very, very uncertain given the political pressures at the moment for further simplification, which still challenge the incremental integration of environment into the CAP. So just some sentences that we may have heard about that. Greening is not taken for granted. CAP reform is not set in stone. It can be changed during the midterm review. Some others said shifting the waste greening payments towards the biodiversity fund would be more effective, etc., etc. It means that the greening of direct payment is still challenged by many stakeholders at the moment, even during this first year of implementation of the greening measures. My conclusions at this stage, but I would say first conclusions because it's the first year of implementation of the greening measures. First of all, we can say that during the CAP reform talks, I would say a very large majority of member states and MEPs have weakened the requirements of the 3 greening measures proposed by the European Commission. Such measures were already not very ambitious, but policymakers from the Council and the Parliament have weakened the requirements in order to not hamper the short-term competitiveness of farmers. In that respect, many ag ministers and MEPs still consider the reinforcement of environment into the CAP as a constraint, while agri-environmental standards and incentives are sources of innovation for long-term food security and for collective welfare today. Even if 30% of payment dedicated to the green payment is a good progress for the CAP legitimacy, I would say, the effectiveness and the efficiency of the greening measures need to be properly assessed according to their original objectives regarding the biodiversity protection, for instance. Otherwise, the green payments, which represent 30 billions of euro per year for the EU 28 might appear very costly compared to the environmental benefits to expect from that, including the protection and improvement of biodiversity, the soil fertility gains, and the protection of permanent grasslands, just for a few examples. So, this is there are some conclusions, first conclusion at this stage, and I would conclude my presentation right now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you for your presentation. We have some questions coming in. So I would kindly ask you if you could hang on. We might run a few minutes late, but hopefully we'll get through most of them today. If we don't, you can find the answers on the Can EU Capit platform in the discussion forum. So the first question I'm going to read is, how can we better improve the policy-making process of the CAP at an institutional level? What do you think, Samuel? How can we better improve the policy-making process of the CAP at an institutional level?
Okay, thank you for this question. This is a very central question about the policy-making process. But we have to admit, regarding that process, policy-making game, that first, among the three European institutions in charge of such policy-making process, namely the Commission, the Councils, and the European Parliament, they are not on the same foot of equality regarding the subject. For instance, the improvement of the environmental components into the CAPs. Just an example, for instance, in my view, regardless the co-decision process introduced some years ago between the Parliament and the Council, in my view, the Council remains more equipped, with more expertise, with more national administration, with staffs. So the Council has more opportunity and more chances to assess and to analyze the reform proposals by the Commission compared to the Parliament, which has no research or expertise department, no administration to analyze to assess the CAP reform proposals, and so there is a gap between the two institutions. And secondly, there is another gap, given that the MEPs, the Parliament, is not in charge of the implementation of the CAP reform nor the greening stuff compared to the administrators. So we have some asymmetry between the policymakers regarding their respective function in the process, I would say.
Okay, thank you for the answer. There is another one maybe in regards to this question as well. In comparison to the other institution, the European Commission has been a champion of the greening concept. Do you think, however, if the Commission is not prepared to follow through with its commitment to propose an increase in the ecological focus area percentage to 7%, would you say that this would be the final nail in the coffin for greening?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. We have to remind that before the the launching of the legislative proposal, obviously the main reformers, the main champions of greening for the CAP would have preferred to concentrate the efforts and the financial provisions on Pillar 2 rather than on Pillar 1, because Pillar 2 has proven some experience in agri-environmental schemes, while Pillar 1 is a very old-style pillar, which may not be very well equipped or fit for environmental purpose. So it has to be proven. But regarding coming back to the figures about EFAs, 5% versus 7% of EFAs, I would say first of all, the most important is not the figures themselves, but the quality of EFAs, the quality. How do we qualify the type of EFAs? So we have to recognize first that we have different types of EFAs. For instance, on one hand, the landscape features, on the other hand, nitrogen fixing crops, and whose different kind of EFAs may not deliver the same, the same improvement for biodiversity in the fields, regardless the rate, 5 or 7%. So there's also a debate to how do we measure the quality of each item of EFAs regarding the 5 or the 7% rate. The 5 or the 7% rate is a target rate. It's an important target to mobilize the stakeholders around this biodiversity objective. But I come back to the assessment of the EFAs. It's very important to assess the quality of each item in order to say in 2017, well, we can move to 7%, but we could recommend to give a preference to certain EFAs, the most efficient EFAs for biodiversity compared to other inefficient type of EFAs.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the answer. I have one really interesting and probably last question that we have time for today. Will the greening measure come under further pressure from the farming lobby because of bad financial situation in some sectors, for example, dairy or meat? What do you think, Samuel?
Yes, good question, because it has already happened some weeks ago, some months ago. You may know, you certainly know that the crisis, the drop of prices of milk, of meat, have led the ministers of agriculture to organize a council on September the 7th, and in that context, if the subject is about mainly the market management instrument, safety net, etc., some farmers' unions are making strong pressure to their national ag ministers to take that opportunity, this market crisis opportunity, to further water down some greening measures, which is not acceptable in my view, because it's I would say it's in no way direction, and this shows in reality a complete lack of understanding of the objective of the greening measures, which is to provide some public goods from the agricultural practices, from agronomic practices, because it's good for the collective welfare for society. So agricultural production may also produce some byproduct like environmental public goods, and that's the way that the common agricultural policy may support them in the future. So this is, in my view, a complete failure, a wrong way to further attack the greening measures in that context of drop of prices. So you're right. This is a risk, but we have many answers to bring to the ministers and to the policymakers also.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the answer. I'm afraid this is all the time we had for all the questions. If there are any more coming through, we'll make sure they get answered on the Can EU Capit platform. And thank you, Samuel, for your time today. For all the participants, please remember this is a part of our webinar series. So we have another webinar coming by the end of October if you'd like to join us for that. And after you finish, there will be a quick survey for you to finish. Please let us know how did you enjoy this. And we would like to thank the rest of the partners and supporting organization for making this webinar possible. If you'd like to stay in touch, please keep an eye out there on our social media and visit our Can EU Capit platform for more information about the free CAP Pro e-learning course and other features. Thank you for your time today. For everyone, have a good rest of the afternoon. Thank you, Samuel, and this is goodbye.
Thank you. Good afternoon.